right, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, Nico Iamaleava is a Big Ten quarterback. How about that?
To Ohio State, Michigan,
No.
Wisconsin?
No. Here's
so one of them was like USC.
if you told someone that Nico Iamaleava is a Big Ten quarterback, someone who doesn't follow college sports that closely, and you gave them 14 guesses and said, pick the Big Ten school that he ended up with, would they say UCLA? Because I don't think they would.
They'd get to like 13 right before Iowa. They'd be like, all right, he would just go FCS before he hit Iowa. He would stop right there.
Like, did Iowa State join the Big Ten and I missed that? It's so tough to keep up with this conference realignment stuff. It's difficult. Smart move by Nico to work with Tino Sunseri after he was excellent being able to work with Curtis Rourke. You know, he got some of those play calling duties. Sheridan was doing that as well. Or Shanahan, not Sheridan, was doing that as well at IU. That's everyone's biggest takeaway with Nico going to UCLA, right? Is that he joined up with a really smart offensive mind, and this is all everybody's talking about.
They're calling it a super team, from what I've heard.
I think you're going to need a few more elements to make it a super team, but who am I to say? You know, every time we call something a super team, it's wrong. So maybe we should actually be calling it a super team. We need these teams to trade quarterbacks, Will. We do. Joey Aguilar, the former App State transfer who transferred to UCLA in December, is now entering the portal. There's Tennessee interest. A quarterback trade is the next iteration of NIL, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, the only question then becomes, what are the throw-ins? You know, do we get part of the Rocket, Tennessee?
Good call.
Do we get, like, you know, a couple of disposable straws from LA? Like, you got to make it worth my while, you know?
Yeah, the throw-ins are a great part of every trade. Player to be named later. You know, these are NIL deal to be named later, far later, maybe like 10 years from now, we'll get that figured out. But yeah, there are a lot of moving pieces across college football. I actually do have something about Nico and expectations at UCLA coming out on Tuesday by the time people are listening to this on SDS. So for some actual real thoughts on that, feel free to check that out. But we have a great pod coming up today. Jacob Hester is coming up in a bit, like he always does right before the NFL draft. We talk about that. He is going to be in Green Bay. So a lot of discussion about the NFL draft. And then, of course, we discuss some LSU things as well, like we always do with him. And then Lee Corso love in Lad of the Week. But first, before we get into all of that, Will, a quick word from our friends at Dabble. I've talked about Dabble for the last, 3-4 weeks now on this show. For those who don't know, it is a leader in the DFS space. They have a ton going on right now for NBA playoffs and MLB. If you're one of those people that ever since March Madness has ended, you need something to be able to watch these games, to have some sort of a vested interest, Dabble has you covered. They have wasted no time making a name for themselves. Dabble's social function is second to none, and they offer a wide variety of sports for making picks, including, like I said, NBA playoffs, MLB. Use that promo code SDS2 when you sign up today. Receive $25 in bonus cash. No deposit required. Again, that is promo code SDS2 for $25 in bonus cash, courtesy of the good folks at Dabble. Will, let's do some can't-miss SEC draft predictions, shall we?
For sure.
We have a 100% track record on these, I think, at least. As far as I'm concerned, we've...
In our own mind's eye, that's what's important, right?
Never lost. Never lost.
Yep.
So if you don't like spoiled picks, you're one of those people that stays off Twitter during the draft.
You know what? We made fun of LeVar Ball a lot, but at least he had a couple kids that went pro. You know, I think Iamaleava has really validated LeVar Ball. I just want to say that.
I'm not here to compare families and the roles that fathers play. Can be a tricky space to navigate. There have been worse fathers negotiating than LeVar Ball. We could say that. We could definitely say that. We'll leave that one there. This will be the place, though, where we spoil everything that's about to happen as it relates to the SEC in the NFL draft, which, oh, by the way, Thursday night. We're coming out with this pod a little bit early, kind of as a result of that. We got some traveling things that are going to be going on, so wanted to make sure that we get this out in plenty of time before the first round on Thursday night. So if you don't like spoiled picks, just turn this pod off. Unsubscribe, resubscribe, re-download it, listen all the way through after the draft so we still get those numbers, of course. And everybody will be happy. Does that sound good?
Yes, and I'll just record a canned reaction of me screaming at the Saints. You can do the same for the Bears, and then you can just fill in whoever. It'll be like an AI, like, Shadur said, I can't believe we did this. This is unbelievable.
By the way, speaking of our teams, which we will have a little bit of discussion on in a little bit, I am currently rocking this Step Brothers inspired shirt from the fine folks at Breaking Tea, which I am showing the YouTube audience right now. Certain Caleb Williams, certain Roma Dunze. Roma Dunze was on our pre-draft pod last year, so a little bit of a full circle moment. Now I've got that guy on my t-shirt. But yeah, well, let's start with a question that I think is a fair one to ask going into this draft. The first SEC player off the board will be Will Campbell. Will Campbell. This would be a win for your boy because, look, I have been saying a couple of things about Will Campbell really for the last year plus. I'm one of the human beings who doesn't think that there's a universe in which a quarter inch of arm length should have some 10-pick radius for his draft stock. So that would be a win for me there. But also this would confirm my prediction that I had at this time last year that if I had to bet on an SEC player being a first-round pick in the 2025 NFL draft, Will Campbell was the guy that I picked. So full circle, first SEC player off the board, fourth overall to the Pats. I think that happens.
Yeah, and if you followed kind of our other pre-draft coverage, I talked about how Will Campbell was a little bit more raw than I think people are letting on. And I think this destination would be so perfect for him. I know Scarnecchia is no longer there. You know, shout out to Ryan Russello, a guy that was a big Scarnecchia disciple, the old offensive line coach for the Patriots that did great work over, 30 plus years. But I will say that the Patriots have shown kind of that ability to develop offensive linemen. And I think that's where he's getting mocked right now pretty often. So that makes me really excited. And it's so crazy to see the histories of some of these teams with the Patriots up there in the top of the draft.
Vrabel seems like he would love Will Campbell. Like that fit, they probably sat down in one of these meetings and just hit it off. I would not be surprised if they did. Protect Drake May's blind side. Nobody would be surprised to see that. Here's something for you, Will. And this is maybe a little bit more along the depressing lines, but we're going to get into it anyways. Because this is going to be a great flex for Brian Kelly because no coach in college football is better at developing offensive line talent. That's the good news if and when Will Campbell is the first SEC player off the board. But in the last 4 drafts, LSU has had 29 players selected. So that's half Ogeron, half Kelly, because we're talking the 2021 draft is where that starts. And obviously that's the 2020 roster that we're talking about here, which was the beginning of the end for Coach O in Baton Rouge. I found the top 10 teams in terms of draft picks from 2021 to 2024. LSU is 4th. Georgia first, not surprisingly, 42. Bama second with 37. Michigan is 3rd with 35. Then LSU is 4th. Penn State 5th. Ohio State 6th. Texas and Notre Dame tied for 7th. Oregon 9th. Clemson 10th. Will, LSU is the only team in that group that hasn't been to a playoff in the 2020s.
Yeah, I was going to say you were nice for including 2020. But, I mean, I feel like Michigan's kind of an asterisk, too, because they just got a bunch of dudes who were like high school roommates to graduate together. But that being said, yeah, I think that, we're going to have a lot of weird numbers coming through, right, where it comes to the extra year, with COVID, where it comes to the expanded playoff coming out this year. So I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm not as worried about LSU because in the last, first Brian Kelly's first couple of years, they would have made the expanded playoff. So I always say, if expanded playoff is going to be our expectations, let's keep them consistent and not give teams credit for making them this year and not for last year.
Would LSU have made the playoff in 22?
That's what I've lied to myself and said. No. So if it's wrong, don't tell me.
I don't think they would have because they would have because the A&M loss would have been the thing that really hurt them there.
And that's why it's hopium, Connor, because we never would have known. Because maybe the committee would have gone, we love LSU. We'll put them in. We'll never find out.
Yeah, because that's the thing is that no New Year's Six Bowls, no playoff appearances. Penn State and Oregon are the only teams in that group with just one playoff berth. Everyone else has multiple, and then LSU has 0. That is the toughest thing to think about for the first half of this decade for LSU is that they have had talent. They have clearly had talent. Like, look at last year, that draft class that had 3 first-rounders from LSU. All of those guys are already Pro Bowl players. Meanwhile, kind of looking up going, all right, when's it going to start translating again? I think that happens in 2025, a discussion that we will get into with Hester in a bit here.
Listen, I feel like Bane saying you merely adopted the light. I was there with Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham running slant routes. Okay, LSU players not developing in college is nothing new to me. At least LSU has a quarterback now. This is improvement from what I grew up with.
This is true. The first SEC defensive player drafted will be Jalen Walker. Think he goes in the top 10, maybe Carolina at 8 as their Brian Burns replacements. Brian Burns, who went to the Giants, was kind of a great little part of that offseason Hard Knocks, which is no more because the Giants were so bad, which is a shame because I've really enjoyed watching that. I did. Mm-hmm. I felt like I asked a lot during the season, what was Georgia's strength? And by season's end, it was Jalen Walker. It was Jalen Walker and Michael Williams, those guys when they were right. Look, I think the front seven that Georgia has put together year after year in terms of NFL draft talent, it just feels like the hit rate is so high with these guys. Mm-hmm. And maybe we'll see someone like Walker or Michael Williams not live up to it. But if you kind of look back at the last 4, well, I guess you'd have to go 22 through now, Devontae Wyatt is probably the only miss in those early rounds in terms of Georgia front 7 guys. Everybody else, even a slow start for Nolan Smith, I get that. But
none of them are bad. You know, like the worst case scenario is like mid plus, which if you're drafting defensive guys is like pretty solid because every defense needs those guys.
Yeah, and even Trayvon Walker, we criticize the pick, but at the same time, he's becoming a good NFL player. He's just not Aiden Hutchinson. Mm-hmm. So you kind of look up and down and go, well, yeah, Georgia's probably going to get the benefit of the doubt with those guys. That's why I think Walker and Michael Williams are going to end up being 2 guys that are off the board pretty early, probably first half of the first round, and it wouldn't be terribly surprising.
Yeah, it didn't feel like there were as many of these guys that popped for Georgia this year. But I mean, when you say what is Georgia good at, beating the snot out of Texas when it counted, right? And I think that with every year of attrition since these national champions, coaching jobs like that from Kirby just become a little bit more head scratching where it's like, yeah, this isn't like we're getting to the draft rounds. It's not like we're watching these guys shoot up the draft boards the way we've seen in previous years. So maybe we are starting to get a little bit of that Georgia overrating with the defensive guys. But until one of the guys doesn't pan out, to your point, it's kind of hard to say that's wrong.
I would love the true evaluation on how much money Jalen Walker made from that first Texas game because it was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. I don't know if that's the difference between him being a first rounder or a second rounder, but if you just take that off, you just wipe that game from our memory of Jalen Walker, the prospect, and what he did to poor Kelvin Banks. That would have significant ramifications for the conversation surrounding him. But yeah, it feels like he's going to be one of those top 10 picks, and I will not push back on that. The number of SEC quarterbacks selected in round 1 will be 1. Jackson Dart. I think that's it. And I'm aware that Jalen Milroe is going to be in Green Bay for this. Who doesn't want to be in Green Bay in April? Jackson Dart apparently doesn't want to be in Green Bay in April because he pulled out of being there in person. I'm also aware that they can't just have 0 players in Green Bay. You can't just have 6 dudes there. And then that's really awkward, and nobody wants to watch that.
You got to be laughing to yourself about this one. You go, oh, well, the team's communism. Oh, why don't you come visit it then?
You know, how many people in attendance in Green Bay? And I realize they're getting fan bases from all over the country, and the NFL draft is a cool thing to be able to attend. But how many of those Packer fans that will be in person, who will be opening their prestigious doors to the outside world, how many of those diehard Packer fans actually believe that they are owners?
Every time it hits. But yeah, it kind of goes to show. It's like, yeah, this is kind of why we joke about the Packers a little bit. It's like, it's not as glamorous as Radio City Music Hall, but it's the draft nonetheless.
Jalen Milroe is plus 140 on FanDuel to go in the first round. Mm-hmm. Jackson Dart's minus 700. That's a pretty good bet. That's a pretty good bet that he's going off the board there. And whether it's Giants, Steelers, Saints, feels like a lot of teams could be in play for Dart. Cleveland sneaking back into the first round, maybe if they end up taking Travis Hunter with that second overall pick, which I do think that's going to be the case. I don't know that they're going to go for Shedeur that high. I think it's fair to wonder how that'll look with the scheme adjustments. And we're going to get into it with Hester as well. I've kind of said my piece on Dart, so I don't want to repeat myself too much here, but just something to keep in mind with these first round quarterbacks, with Dart, with Milroe, with all of them. In the 2020s, the only first-round quarterback who didn't start multiple games as a rookie was Jordan Love. And that's because he was drafted to a team with Aaron Rodgers, who obviously did a couple of good things in his career or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one was J.J. McCarthy, who got hurt, season-ending injury last year in the preseason. That's it in the 2020s. If you're drafted in the first round, this is not a Pat Mahomes thing. You're starting multiple games. That's just the way that it works now. And maybe a team like the Rams in the last year of Matthew Stafford would have the infrastructure to pull off a move like that, maybe. But it's just so rare to have that, because if you have a quarterback that is on a team that can win now, you're getting pieces around him. Like, it just makes so much more sense to do that, and getting someone that can immediately help you. So I do have questions with Dart, with Milroe, very well documented, but I think that Dart is going to be the only SEC quarterback that comes off the board on Thursday night.
Dart was a guy that I had picked as kind of a late riser. I think there's a couple of different reasons for that. Number one, I don't think he's the type of quarterback who will embarrass you. You know, he's kind of a multi-year starter for a guy that most people like in Lane Kiffin as an offensive mind. So it's not like you're really going to get a guy who's just going to show up and not know how to play football. And I think that teams tend to start to panic and want to have an immediate answer for their owners where it comes to quarterback. I think that Jackson Dart is a great risk to take, is where I'm going with that. I don't really see him as one of these guys a la Mac Jones that teams were starting to go, oh no, we have to have a quarterback. I think that taking a quote unquote risk in kind of the back half of the first round on Jackson Dart could really pay off for a smart team, honestly.
Let's get into the next one then. This goes right into it. Will Jalen Milroe will be drafted by the New Orleans Saints at 40 overall.
This is just beat up Will podcast. We brought up LSU's playoff record for no reason, and now we got at least let me deal with Shador. Jalen Milroe off the board is so cruel.
On a pod in which we have Hester coming up later, I felt like it was okay to do this in the first part. Derek Carr has a shoulder injury. Spencer Rattler could get a nice opportunity.
I was happy about until you started talking about this, actually.
But, all right, so taking a quarterback in the second round would feel more like a Saints move than getting Shador at 9 or Dart at 9 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kellen Moore would want someone that's got at least, and I don't think they are similar players in the way that they are being discussed, but there are enough people to think that they are. Jalen Hurts and Jalen Milroe, very different players. I want to be on the record saying that, okay?
Okay. But
if Kellen Moore sees some of that in Jalen Milroe, that could prompt such a move. If that shakes out this way, and that's the pick at 40 or something, and the Saints end up getting Milroe, what's your reaction as a Saints fan?
I mean, honestly, I remember when the Eagles drafted Hurts when they did, and I remember joking with my buddy who's an Eagles fan, and I'm like, hey, we're going to have to find another pastime for a minute, because that was after the Eagles were kind of on the downswing. Carson Wentz was still kind of like their franchise guy, but it seemed like he wasn't going anywhere. And so I would much rather honestly take a risk on quarterback later in the draft, like the second round in Milroe, than to take someone in this draft. This sounds like a Facebook aunt post, forgive me, but my hope would be to finally just reset, tank for a year, maybe look out for Arch or something in the oncoming draft. So yeah, I think taking a flyer on Milroe, getting, if nothing else, Taysom Hill 2.0. You know, we talked about that in the Milroe, like when his hand size stuff came out, is that, you know, the Saints have a guy that is a sometimes quarterback. So if Milroe can find that type of role in the NFL, the Saints are a place that are used to doing that. So I think you can add a guy who, if you don't like what you see out of him, could still be useful in your offense. I actually don't hate that.
I don't hate Milroe to the Saints either. Mm-hmm. I really don't. And I would want to see him end up either with the Saints, with the Raiders if they draft Genty, because Bowers, Milroe, and Genty would be really fun in a Chip Kelly offense. That'd be I'm here for that. And then Los Angeles with Sean McVay, just because if you're hoping for a quarterback to develop somewhere, you always just wish that he goes to Sean McVay. That's the way that it works.
Yeah.
But I'm not rooting for him to be a first-round pick. I don't want him to be a first-round pick, even though I don't want to also see him have to sweat it out in the green room. I don't think you can actually sweat in Green Bay, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I would much rather see him go to the right situation day 2 and, you know, end up just in the ideal, like, learning environment for what he's going to need to figure out at the NFL level, because when he's right, it's great. And we have praised so many Milroe moments throughout his career that I don't feel like I'm just a hater, but I just don't want to see that guy go in the first round and have those first round expectations and become Zach Wilson by the end of his first year.
You know what? I'm feeling better now. When the Saints inadvertently actually do this, I'm going to feel better. This is a good exercise for both of us here.
There we go. I'm helping you. See,
Yep.
this is all positive. I think Quinn Ewers comes off the board on day three. Day three.
Mm-hmm.
When that best available list is coming out late on Friday night, as everybody is starting to lose the draft juice, that's really when it starts, by the way. That doesn't get talked about enough when it's 11 o'clock on Friday night. And you're like, I'm starting to lose some steam here. The excitement of night one, the guy that I banged the drum for that should have come off the board night one, he finally got picked on night two. But that lull that's going to come on Friday night, Ewers will start showing up on those lists.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that he's the exact same pick as the guy that I just mentioned, Spencer Rattler. I think he's 150th overall in the 5th round, which would be to the Dolphins. Potential nice landing spot for Quinn Ewers. Really nice landing spot. Go work with someone like Mike McDaniel that helps out quarterbacks a ton pre-snap, which I think that's where Ewers is going to need no matter where he goes at this stage of his career with the amount of football that he's played. I still think the pre-snap issues or the post-snap issues are going to be a major, major question for him moving forward. But that quarterback room, would be Tua, Zach Wilson, and Quinn Ewers.
It's a lot of talent on that roster. I was going to say they found a way to get a quarterback whose shoulder is more barbecue chicken than Tua. That would be Quinn Ewers coming in. Like their whole staff and Tyreek Hill would just be like, guys, come on. If you're going to bring in a young guy, just give me one with a rocket. I could just get it 90 yards down the field.
That'd be great. I would love to see a situation like that. All right, the SEC player that'll sneak out of the first round who will be an afterthought. Wait a minute. Let me rephrase that. No. I don't like the way that I said that because this guy shouldn't be an afterthought.
Sneaky, underrated, riser. Yeah.
The SEC player that'll sneak out of the first round that NFL people will overthink.
There we go.
James Pierce Jr.
True.
Two things will lead to this. He's small for an edge guy, even though like 245. He's 6'5". He can put on weight. I still am of the belief that James Pierce Jr. can put on weight and maintain his speed. The dip that he had, sacks production, everybody always talks about that with the edge guy, 7.5 sacks in his pre-draft year. That first step is going to translate at the next level. I feel good about that. I think his floor is a lot higher than some are making it out to be. I don't think you can teach that. I really don't. And as for the things that you can teach, I think Pierce is a little bit more polished in those areas than someone like Shamar Stewart, who is going to end up coming off the board before he does. And I'm going to go, this is just pre-draft 101. This is exactly the type of thing that happens when you have this long of a pre-draft process. And I think too many teams will look at Pierce as being that third edge rusher instead of that dude who can line up and play immediately. And it's going to take one mini camp and people will say, yep, that guy can play immediately. And he shouldn't have fallen to round 2. The only instance of Pierce falling to round 2 that won't have me shaking my head is if he goes to the Bears with one of those early round 2 picks that they have. Mm-hmm. So there is a scenario in which I could like how things shake out for James Pierce Jr., but feel like he's just going to be one of those guys where like, oh man, who would have thought a year ago that he wasn't going to be a first round pick?
Yeah, I mean, this might just be my like simpleton brain who hasn't watched a ton of these like specific guys, but he just reminds me a little bit of Verse, like Jared Verse, where it's like he came into the year with a ton of hype. His stats kind of took a dip, but guys were clearly like the defense or like the other side was clearly like scheming for him, right? They were doubling him. They were putting a lot of attention towards him. And if you look at their measurables, they're like almost identical. I mean, like Pierce is about an inch taller, but not quite as stocky. But now we suddenly don't care about hands because his hands are bigger than Verse. So like, yeah, I mean, if you look at Verse, who was a guy that like basically was a 0-star recruit, like a 2-star recruit that had transferred, and then you look at Pierce, and it's like we kept the hype alive for Verse because of kind of one good year outside of recruiting, outside of everything else, because we believed in it. And then you look at Pierce, where it's like, yeah, this guy just had the typical down year that every D end has right before their pre-draft season. I think, yeah, okay, he's not going to be maybe the Myles Garrett of this class, but I think he's going to be a useful player.
And then Verse gets to the NFL, and what does he do? Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Same guy he's always been. That's kind of right here, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so speaking of things that I want, in the same way that Brock Bowers had Kyle Pitts to blame for him not being a top 10 pick, Tyler Warren will have Brock Bowers to thank for him not falling out of the top 10.
Am I just alone on Kyle Pitts Island here? Me, of all people, the LSU Saints fan? I still think Kyle Pitts is a good football player and the Falcons are just stupid. I don't know.
Not going to pretend that I sit here and watch Falcons games every Sunday afternoon during the fall. I don't. I've seen limited instances of Kyle Pitts as someone that is a Bijan Robinson fantasy investor. But the amount of times in which he has taken over a game through 4 years in the NFL, it's kind of startling. I thought there'd be so many more of those instances where he'd at least pop for 150 and he would just be a matchup nightmare. It just hasn't really happened. So, look, I think it's still unbelievable that Bowers fell to 13th. That's going to be an all-time 20 years from now. How did you let that happen? As he's up there giving a speech at Canton talking about his doubters.
You know why that happened, bro. You know why that happened, because he looks like that, bro. He's balding. He doesn't look good in shorts. Let's be honest here for a second. There's never been a football player like Brock Bowers that looks like someone's dad that goes up there and bosses on everyone.
The Jalen Walker Texas game, how much money that made for Jalen Walker. The side-by-side pick that came out during pre-draft of Gronk side-by-side with Brock Bowers. How much money did that lose Brock Bowers? A lot. Probably a lot. And it's so stupid, and I hate it so much. It is the Kyle Pitts thing as well, though. It has to be. But when he's giving his speech in Canton, and he's talking about those doubters, Brock Bowers will actually have real doubters because he fell to 13. And I get it. Like, quarterbacks were taking whatever. It's still going to look back. We're going to look back and think that was so stupid. And I'm including my own team in that. Okay. I'm hand up here. Even though I'm literally repping a T-shirt of a guy, the two guys in which the Bears drafted ahead of Brock Bowers, I still am fully acknowledging how ridiculous that is. But anyway, that is not the standard for Tyler Warren. It does, however, change the ceiling and what he could potentially be capable of. I also think there are just too many teams in the top 10 who are going to say, look, even if Tyler Warren is not Brock Bowers 2.0, we can't take that risk. We have to take that guy, whether, maybe it is the Jets at 7 or maybe it ends up being the Saints or something like that. I have told myself that this is my draft pecking order of what I want as a fan. If Genty doesn't get picked by the Raiders and he falls, I want him in Chicago in a Ben Johnson offense. Okay?
Who's got one of those, Connor? Sounds like you guys.
Sounds great, doesn't it? I don't care how deep the running back class is. That guy is special. If Genty is off the board, Tyler Warren doesn't go to the Jets at 7. I want Warren at 10, playing 12 personnel with Cole Kmet and giving Caleb Williams a unique weapon. I would love that. That'd be great. If both of those guys are off the board and Will Campbell isn't picked by the Pats at 4 because of the quarter inch of his arms, I want Will Campbell. If those three guys are all unavailable for the Bears at 10, I will be very bummed. I will cry my eyes out. I will say, why does everyone hate me? That's not true. But I will hope that the Bears end up just trading back the pick because I think those three guys have such a very obvious need for my specific team. But who knows? I've kind of gone back and forth with expectations of feeling like a front office is going to do exactly what I want them to do as opposed to what ends up being the right decision.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, again, like just saying a Ben Johnson offense should make you feel better, as a Bears fan, because it feels like that's at least an ethos, right? As far as these tight ends go, I do think we found the common denominator here in that Kyle Pitts looked awesome in shorts, right? He measured out great at the combine. He was like this Greek god. He wasn't really a great blocker, and I think people kind of overlooked that. And like I said, I'm still kind of holding a little bit of the stock for him as more of like a wide receiver, though, because I don't think he's ever going to have the body to truly be like a get low and block with the length he has. Brock Bowers, like I said, just looked like a regular dude without pads on. And that's just more to the Paul Bunyan-esque, legend of Brock Bowers. I don't even think it even makes teams dumb for passing on him because who got him? The Raiders. It's not like they're super smart or anything. So I think at the end of the day, like sometimes exceptions prove the rule, and I think we've seen that twice in a row. Now, Tyler Warren doesn't have the same issues as Kyle Pitts as far as blocking. One thing that guy is going to give you, kind of like Cole Kmet, is he's going to block even if he is a bust, right? And if you have an offense that you can do something in, like you could be useful in a Ben Johnson offense if you're just Tyler Warren and you can block. So I think that would be a great spot for him. But I think that I see him more as a Bowers than a Pitts just based on, and again, I don't want to it's not a racial thing at all. It's just the fact of how these guys measured and how they looked and how they interviewed and everything. And I think Warren has this brand of like, hey, he's going to be physical, he's going to be dirty, and he's going to be massive regardless. And you can't really teach that,
He can throw passes too.
Right. He's a winner. He's willing to do, whatever he needs to. And like, to be clear, Bowers had some of that too when it comes to playing weird roles, whereas like Pitts kind of can only do one thing.
Yeah, agree. More of a one-trick pony Pitts was, and Bowers has just been a phenomenal football player ever since that Clemson game, 2021, and you know, in which he did so many things from the jump. All right, so speaking of wants for specific teams, I know we got a lot of Falcons fans listening to this show. I think the Falcons draft their second player from a Kirby Smart coached Georgia defense. How about that? It is one of the most baffling things ever. And Falcon fans, I don't want to say I have ignored this problem, but I haven't realized how serious this problem was and how it has coincided with this run of dominance, specifically on the defensive side for Georgia during the Kirby Smart era. Kirby's entering year 10 at Georgia. Okay. So this is not like, oh, it was like a 4 or 5 year. No. He's entering year 10. The only time that the Falcons have taken a single player from one of those defenses was Zion Logue, who didn't even make the official roster. And I'm going to be honest, guys, I think we cover this pretty closely. Okay. We watch this conference very much on a, hey, we can remember specific instances from 5-6 years ago that the average college football fan is not going to be able to cite. Okay. Couldn't tell you one standout play that guy made in college. That's why he was a 6th round pick. Went back and watched highlights this morning. One of the most underwhelming things I've seen.
I'm glad you said it because I was like, who?
I hope he's got a good college. I hope he's got a good football career, whatever's ahead. All right, I do. But that's the one guy that the Falcons have taken from a Kirby Smart defense. So to recap, the Falcons have yet to draft a Georgia defensive player who made the team during the Kirby Smart era, and the Eagles are getting to the Super Bowl with Georgia's front seven and basically just copying, pasting. Whatever. There are things that are above my pay grade. I guess that's one of them. This finally changes for the Falcons. They finally get someone earlier than the 6th round. They desperately need pass rushers, so could be in an interesting spot to move to the top and maybe into the top 10 to get a Jalen Walker. Could also maybe wait and get Mykel Williams. I did in our mock that Adam and I did. We had because the Falcons are picking 15th overall, I want to say, and I have Mykel Williams going to 14th, which would just be the most excruciating thing ever for Georgia fans. I didn't even do that on purpose, but Adam pointed out, I was like, oh yeah, that actually makes a lot more sense. I feel even better about that pick. That could happen, but knowing the Falcons, they won't do that in the 1st round. Let's just be honest. Never mind the fact that their biggest needs coincide with Georgia's 2 best prospects in the NFL draft. So I'll instead call my shot. I'll say Nas Stackhouse. He's the guy. Round 4 or 5 before round 6.
Yeah, it's it's over the course of several administrations with the Falcons too. And I know this is a Saints fan because they went through that with LSU. When LSU was on this run, they just didn't draft LSU players. And Tyrann Mathieu, like coming back, was seen as a really big deal. I think this is truly just a case of the NFL guys thinking they're a little bit smarter than everyone else and saying like, oh, we got to get these guys away from their home or whatever, and kind of like away from the environment. I don't know because it's been several administrations, but yeah, I think kind of Grady Jarrett getting injured, getting older, all that different stuff. I do think that there's definitely a need there. And to your point, there definitely isn't like a hard, fast rule. I just think it's been different things over different times. And if you're in the place the Falcons are, right, where you just had Kirk Cousins break one of Matt Ryan's records on Matt Ryan night, and then you benched him, and you have all the stuff going on with them, getting a hometown guy, I think does builds you a little bit of goodwill with the fan base.
To be an hour away from that type of talent,
yep,
and to get so little of it, that's when it's hard to. Because I agree with you to a certain extent. If there are situations in which you say, all right, I'd rather take a guy that's kind of getting a fresh start or something like that, and him not coming in thinking, oh, he's already got the fan base won over. Like there is something kind of to that. But we're talking about a decade now.
Yeah.
Like there's just no reason for it, especially when you watch the Falcons have all the success that or the Eagles have all the success that they've had with Georgia players. Freudian slip on that part. My bad. Falcons fans, you did not deserve it. That was mean. I did not intend to do that, I promise. The SEC team with the most first-round picks will be Georgia and Texas will tie 3 apiece. That's my guess. Texas has Banks, Golden, Barron. Georgia has Walker, Williams, Malachi Starks. Bama's going to be in play. Jahad Campbell, Tyler Booker. Those 2 guys pretty much seem obvious, even if they aren't going to be top 10 picks. And then could depend on Milroe for that 3rd pick there. Ole Miss can also be kind of sneaky. Also, I maybe would need Dart coming off the board, and then Trey Amos is a guy that is getting mocked as a first-round corner. And then Walter Nolan. man, I've seen as high as 11 on him, and then as low as I think late second round. So all over the place on Walter Nolan. But
People have been pretty logical this draft, it feels. I haven't gotten like the stupid thing that's come out yet. I'm sure it'll happen in the next day or so before this comes out.
yeah, maybe. Who knows? All the pre-draft smoke that's going to come with that. But yeah, it was a CBS Sports mock that had Walter Nolan 11th overall, and I was like, oh dang, that would certainly be way higher than I had him coming off the board. But I think all four of those teams could be in play to lead the SEC with first round picks. No SEC team has had more than 3 first rounders since Georgia had the 5 in 2022. Speaking of the Eagles, all of which were defensive players off that historically great 2021 defense. Of course,
I mean, it really just was a 1-to-1. Like, I hate to say that, but sometimes us college guys are just right, where it's like, wow, this entire defense is just playing in the Super Bowl now. They didn't miss a beat. They're literally just doing what they were doing in Georgia. It's pretty funny when that happens.
If you make another higher level of football, they'll probably be playing in that too. You know?
Like, on one hand, you have Josh Allen just being the MVP and everybody being wrong, and on the other end, you just have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Like, wow, these are the same routes we were running at LSU. The NFL is such a confusing place, man.
Yeah. All right, last one. The SEC will tie its first-round record from 2020 with 15 first-round picks. Probably should have an asterisk because obviously Texas and Oklahoma are now part of it. They weren't part of it in 2020. Oh, well. Adam and I mocked 16 SEC players coming off the board in the first round. Jordan Reed had 15 mocked for ESPN on Monday. Kuiper, Field Yates, they did a mock last week that had 15. Could be a slow start in that top 5 for the SEC. Fully expected Danny Cannell tweet if Will Campbell is not off the board at 4 and no SEC players come off the board in the top 5. DK is then going to flex about Cam Ward, even though it's going to pain him to do so. Just wait. That would be my advice for those who want to clap back immediately at Danny. Let him have his fun. You know it's coming, and then just wait till the end of the draft or wait till the end of the first round even. But yeah, the last time the SEC failed to have a top 5 pick, 2018. Yeah, Roquan, first player off the board. Probably should have still been part of the team that drafted him, if I had to say so. That's a painful one. By the way,
and I'll also say, I mean, this is kind of cheating because they added teams, right? I mean, they're going to break this record every year coming up. It does feel like a little bit of a down year if they're only equaling that, right?
Yeah, it gets weird now with these stats because the Big Ten now is 18,
right?
And maybe the Big Ten is going to finally end the SEC streak, which, by the way, is at 18 years of having the most total draft picks. But you look up and go, well, the Big Ten is 18 teams, the SEC is 16. So I don't know if that's going to factor into it. But last year, I predicted that the Big Ten was going to have more draft picks than the SEC. I thought it was setting up for that with all the picks Michigan was going to have coming off the board. I thought it made a lot of sense. Maybe Ohio State having some of those guys came back. I probably should have looked at that more. But and then the Big Ten didn't even finish second because the Pac-12 had more than the Big Ten last year, which is kind of crazy. So now a lot of those, Pac-12, talent bubbles will be going to the Big Ten. And so that's going to be factored into this as well. But
very confusing night for graphics we're going to see. I think to put a bow on all that, we're going to see some graphics that make zero sense because some conferences are going to try to claim old guys and then claim the new guys. I think there's going to be a fun creative meeting going on at the Big Ten this week for sure.
The Pac-12 should just claim everyone.
Yep.
Just if a guy played a down of football on the Pac-12 at any point, just claim it. I don't know. I haven't kept tabs on the Pac-12's official football account on the app formerly known as Twitter, but let's just say I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing some flexing. They should. Everybody's got to do all their flexing, their bragging. That's what the draft is for, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, any other thoughts? Any other predictions you want to throw in here? I realize I didn't get to a lot. I mean, there's a lot of things that are still on the board here that I could have gone down that road. Why it is that it feels like Ohio State doesn't have that top tier talent, even though we're talking about it as one of the most talented teams of all time, which is kind of weird. Maybe part of it is because of the guys that are still in school. That's definitely part of it. Narrative taken care of there. Anything else that I should have discussed here when talking about the draft this week?
Yeah, I think Ohio State just goes to prove that like every team is going to be called the greatest team, right? Because we got a team that, yeah, they had a pretty hard road, but they didn't win a conference championship. But we're seeing again the creative team be like, oh my gosh, this is the most insane thing that's ever happened. And yeah, I mean that's just totally discrediting, right? Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Miami, so the teams that have come through. But yeah, I'm. It feels like we're seeing a lot of like diversity kind of through this draft. Like I was talking about, while the conferences are kind of getting more consolidated, and we hear more about guys transferring, it does seem like we're having like a couple of just random guys like slip through the cracks. So that's always good that the talent doesn't feel consolidated when we get to the end of the process. Yeah, I just hope my team does not make a mistake at the quarterback position. But I am again just kind of where you were. It's like we've switched sides where you now have a franchise quarterback, and I'm sitting here each draft going, I know I'll be unhappy by the end of this night, but I don't know how. And that's where I'm at right now, Connor.
I'm just unhappy every football season. So welcome to my life. Better to be
Well,
unhappy than in April than mid-November, you know.
well,
So
now you got Indiana, so they got to really work hard to keep your attention.
football school. Some are
Yep.
sane. Some are definitely sane. All right, let's kick it to Jacob Hester. Great stuff with him as always. Love that he's going to be at the draft, and so he's going to be dissecting a lot of these storylines for Sirius, for with EJ Manuel and all the great work that they do on off campus. So I got into a bunch of draft storylines with him. Talked about LSU storylines, whether or not this is truly a playoff or bust type year for Brian Kelly. So here is Jacob Hester. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is the one and only Jacob Hester. Hester, do you still get nervous draft week? Like, do you wake up in a cold sweat thinking that there was something during the pre-draft process that you just forgot to do or something like that, and you're going to go undrafted or something because of it?
Right. I do always replay like that week kind of in my head because you second guess so many different things when it comes to that week. You're like, wait a minute, like when I was going through this process, all this advice that I'm giving all these people, like, did I do the same things? Like, did I do the right things? Was I making sure that everything was taken care of? And so, not necessarily nervous, but I certainly do kind of replay everything in my mind. It's like, man, I remember kind of waking up and the week of, and there's this weird feeling because you don't know where you're going to go. Like, okay, unless you're like a first rounder, a lot of us don't know where we're going to get drafted. And I fell into that camp, Connor, where I was like second to fifth round. You know what I mean? Like anywhere in between there. And so it's like, well, I mean, I want to be certainly a second rounder if I can, but more importantly, like, all right, I know I'm going to get drafted. That's the number one goal, but where am I going to live for the next, hopefully at least 4 years? Right. And I was married at the time. So, you know, me and my wife were talking about it because you could end up in Cleveland. You could end up in, you know, what, Green Bay, which I'm excited to go this week, but I got a chance to spend, you know, 5 years in San Diego. So like you don't know where you're going to live. And that's kind of wild because when you're coming out of high school, for the most part, like you get to choose, right? You've got, if you're in an SEC school, you got 25, 30, 35 offers to choose from, and you get to select. Well, here in this situation, no, they tell you where you're going to go, and it can be literally like the frozen tundra. It can be in Buffalo. It can be at the time in San Diego. It can be in New Orleans, where like cost of living and all those different things kind of come into play. So I definitely remember, because I was married, like remember that conversation maybe more than anything.
And then telling your wife, hey, we're going to San Diego. That's pretty
Yeah.
good. That worked out pretty well.
Because she had not been there yet. So when I got drafted, I had never been there. I went on my my pre-draft visit there. And so that was the first time that I'd ever, like, I kind of knew where San Diego was, but I had never been there. The only time I'd ever been to California, we played De La Salle in high school, the school they made a movie about, but that was Northern California. And I'd never been to Southern California. I remember Connor flying in, and you fly in downtown. I mean, you're in the thick of it, and
Yep.
you got the bay right there, all this just beautiful landscape. It's like, oh, this is different. I love Louisiana. You know that about me, but this is not Louisiana. And I remember just being blown away the entire time. And so, yeah, when I got drafted there, I was like, oh, just wait until we go on our first visit there.
Okay, so if I told you second round of the Saints or third round to the Chargers, where you ended up, which would you have taken?
Ooh, at that time, second round to the Saints.
Yeah.
Without question. Now looking back, because I do have such a love for San Diego and my teammates in the Chargers. Yeah, I tell you Chargers now, but at that time, oh yeah, I definitely would have said second round to the Saints. I went through a lot of bad times rooting for the Saints growing up. Outside of like the Bobby Abear days in the early 90s and then some of the Aaron Brooks early 2000 days, there was a lot of Billy Joel Hobart, Mike Buck. I'm trying to think of the quarterbacks. Jeff Blake after Cincinnati. There was a lot of bad there in New Orleans.
Whoever the quarterback was for Ditka's team after he traded the entire draft for Ricky Williams. I don't even remember.
I think that was Billy Joel Hobart. I think it could have been. I mean, Danny Warfel was there at one point.
Shout out Danny.
I'm trying to think. I know. Shout out to Danny. Danny's a legend in college football. There was a lot. I feel like I'm missing like one like marquee name. Shout out to my guy Billy Joel Tolliver. There was two Billy Joels, by the way, Tolliver and Holbert. Yeah, it was kind of the Cajun Cannon, and then you had Aaron Brooks, and that was about it.
And then a certain guy named Drew, and it all worked out for you.
Yeah, Drew turned out okay. Now they're searching again, though.
This is true. All right, so Jackson Dart going to the Saints. That would be what for you?
So, okay, I would love it. I'm a big Jackson Dart fan. And in the draft world, when I say that, I kind of get that look like, are you sure? Is he a system guy? I'm like, even if he is, he got better every single year. Like you go back and you look at all 3 years at Ole Miss and he got better. The stats went up in like every category. And I think he came to Ole Miss and he has always had the moxie, but maybe he's a little bit of a wild card. But I think he honed some of that in year by year. Like the bad, crazy plays, I think went away. Now, some of those are still there. He does have the gunslinger mentality, but I think that's what you like about Jackson Dart. And he's honed it in enough for me. I actually think he's going to be a good pro. And I think he's got some of that piss and vinegar, like I like to call it, to be able to be like, okay, well, you told me I'm not going to be A, B, and C. Well, I'm going to be A, B, C, and D. Like he's got that about him. I was interviewing him. It was on the field after the Senior Bowl, one of the practices, and they were taking some extra snaps under center because that group struggled that day because they hadn't done it. And I'm kind of like, hey, when's the last time you've done this? He was like, what do you mean? Last snap of my college career. I took it because we took a knee and we won the game. You know what I mean? So he's like, I'm like, okay, pretty good answer here on the spot. And so he's got that about him, which you got to have a little bit of that, in my opinion. Like if you don't have all the physical tools, right? And he's got a lot of them. So I'm not saying he doesn't, but if you're missing a little bit, how do you make up for that? I think you make up for it with some of your mentality. And I think he's got exactly what you want. I think he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. So if the Saints selected Jackson Dart, I actually think it would be successful.
How real is that stuff, though? Because I think with Dart, everybody's asking, if you have questions about him, they're pretty much the same ones of, all right, he's not taking snaps under center. The play action numbers are off the charts compared to the NFL and, the up-tempo offense. You're not going to run that much up-tempo in the NFL. You're just not. How often did you come across a case in your career where you watched a guy come into the league and you very quickly realized whatever the scheme he was playing in, it was a huge learning curve for him, and maybe he struggled or maybe he worked his way through that. But is that stuff real, or do we perhaps make too big of a deal? And I mean, we're not talking about like Army going to the NFL and being like, oh, they have to learn how to run a
right.
offense. True. But like, is there an example like that where it's maybe a Lane Kiffin type offense where there were those guys you kind of questioned, you had to see him work through it?
No, without question. And I don't think there's you don't have to pigeonhole it to just quarterback. I think it's multiple positions. Now, that's not to say that they can't learn. Like, that's the thing that does make me mad. It's like, okay, when somebody comes out of a system like that, they just assume they can't learn. Now, they have to show you they can, but who's to say they can't, right? It's just automatic. Oh, he played for Mike Leach. Quarterback can't do it. He played for Lane Kiffin. No, can't do it. He was in that Tennessee offense at running back. It was really just the offense. Dylan Sampson can't do it. I'm like, he was just the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. Why are we saying this kid can't do it? Like, go back and go watch the tape, because any offense, I can look at it. Okay, can this guy run? Let's go to the running back positions. What I know best. Can he run a zone run? Okay, check. Can he run a gap scheme, counter, power run? Okay, check. I don't care how he got there. I don't care if it was out of pistol. I don't care if it was out of gun. The runs are the runs. They're going to be blocked the same. but I feel like so many Italian evaluators just like, can't do it just off the bat. Same thing happens at quarterback. Obviously, that's the position that probably gets graded the hardest. But I'll give you an example for me as somebody that did it. We had Luis Vasquez when I was in San Diego and in Denver. He's my teammate in 2 different spots, but he was an offensive lineman coming from Texas Tech. Huge splits,
Yep.
The Mike Leach offense, you're not asked to do a lot, certainly in the run game. And he fell in the draft because of it. We got him into camp, OTAs, and I'm like, this guy's a mauler. Like, where was he from? Even me, I'm like, Texas Tech? I didn't know they had maulers at offensive line. I just didn't think they did. But he put his hand in the ground. He had normal splits, and he was just a good football player, right? But he fell into the draft. I think we got him maybe in the 3rd round. He ended up starting like 8 years in the NFL, got paid twice. And that's the kind of what you fall into is like you get pigeonholed in this. Well, he came from this. We don't really run that. I don't think, no, just do a deep dive, do your homework. And I'm not saying that every team doesn't, but there's some positions that it's pretty easy because where do they finish? Not how do they start the play, but how does the play finish? Like if you're a quarterback, okay, is he going to throw an 18-yard dig route? I don't care what offense you're in. Can he make that throw? Oh, he can do it. Okay, good. And just go throw by throw, go route by route at receiver, go run by run at running back, go blocking scheme by blocking scheme on the offensive line. So it's a deep dive, and you got some questions where a lot of offenses, but like you said, unless you're at a service academy, and I can't really tell, you can either do it or you can't. You just got to watch the tape.
I'm guilty of that too. I held that against
we all
Charles
are.
Cross.
I mean, like I said, like I had a teammate. I'm like, oh, this guy's from Texas Tech. He's going to get mauled. Well, he became the mauler.
Yeah. Charles Cross was the example that I need to always remind myself of because throughout that pre-draft process, I'm like, it's a Mike Leach offensive lineman. This guy's getting top 10 love. Like, I just don't see it. Now you look up a few years later what he's become with the Seahawks. You're like, where would they be without that guy? So you're right. There's just so much more to that. Speaking of offensive tackles, in your unbiased opinion, what are your thoughts on Will Campbell's arms and the 1/4 inch that he may or may not have working in his favor?
Gosh, this is the part of the draft that I do hate, and I love the draft. I'm headed out to Green Bay this week. Cannot wait to get there. But it's so long from the last college football game until the draft, right? We're talking about 3.5 months. And so we have so much time to talk about it. We talk ourselves into anything. And Will Campbell's arm length, and there's not a tackle that has that arm length, and you got to check this box. I'm like, okay, I do understand some of that. But also, if you're a dude that can walk into LSU, right, a place that's pretty successful, and start from the moment you walk on campus at left tackle. Think about like some of the people that didn't do that. Andrew Whitworth might end up a Hall of Famer. He didn't do that. I mean, we could go name for name of guys that played in the NFL, some that are still playing. They didn't do that. From day one, without question, he was the left tackle. His first game was against Jared Verse. Had a pretty good rookie year last year for the Rams. All right. And you didn't notice Will, right? Because Will played really well in that game. Will played really well in every game. In fact, like doing the broadcast this year, if he lost a rep and the guy got a pressure on Nussmeier, we were like calling it out on the broadcast because it was that rare. Like, oh man, Will Campbell lost that rep. Like, I don't really know what's going on up there. They got to lock in. It's like he lost a rep in the SEC. And that was just like a pressure. Wasn't even a sack. So you do it at that high of a level in this conference at a school like LSU from day one, and like the tape backs it up. No, I mean, that guy is, in my opinion, the first tackle off the board. There's no questions with him. He's going to play for as long as he wants to play. Certainly not in the pass protection game. Now, if you want to get to the run game stuff, sure, because, his first couple of years, they had Jaden Daniels. There wasn't a whole lot of diversity in the run game because you didn't have to. You were going to run zone runs. It was going to be some zone reads, and 5 was going to pull it and go 80-something yards. Okay. Now, that's not to say Will can't do it. The tape was a lot of zone runs because, well, again, they had a unicorn at quarterback. Some of this year, you had some gap scheme stuff that you can kind of go off of. But no, if there's a question mark in this draft, it's not Will Campbell.
Where is the question mark in this draft for you?
I think it's going to be probably the most one is going to be quarterback, second quarterback. Who's that going to be? That's a big question mark. Shadur Sanders, and it feels like some teams love him. Some teams got a lot of questions, holding on to the football. Like that always plays. I think the quarterback question, the receiver question, which one's going to be the first off the board? Like at first it was Tedero McMillan. Like he was going to be the guy. And now it's like, nope, it's not going to be him. It's going to be Matthew Golden, which I don't hate. I mean, following Texas in the college football playoff and covering those games, I'm like, why is this guy not being talked about more? This guy's cooking every DB he goes against. And so who goes first at receiver? How many receivers actually go in the first round? Because we started with a handful. And now with every mock draft that comes out, it's like, well, you got some dudes in the second round. Like, where's Luther Burden going to go? You and I have talked, 3 years about Luther Burden. Where is he going to go? So I'm intrigued by the receivers. I think Matthew Golden might actually be the best receiver in this draft. And that wasn't something we said, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. That playoff run he had was so impressive. SEC championship game he had was highly impressive. Another storyline, Travis Hunter. Like, okay, well, who drafts him? And do you get somebody that's going to be a star on both sides of the football? Because I think he could be. Like, how much do you do it? Which meeting is he in, right, first? And which ones he go to secondary? Is going to be 70% defense, 30% offense, vice versa? Because we haven't really seen anything like that. So I think Travis Hunter, I think the quarterbacks behind Cam Ward, we all think he's going to go number one. Is Sanders truly valued like we think he is? Jackson Dart, who we've already talked about. Jalen Milroe is intriguing. I feel like somebody's going to take a chance on Jalen Milroe. There's a lot of good tape out there, and a lot of the best tapes against the school that I played for. Unfortunately, I've seen him go up and down the field for 2 years and nobody could touch it. But I was also at the Senior Bowl, and I saw him struggle every day there at practice. It got better, but did it get better enough each and every day to think that he can be an every down quarterback in the NFL? I'm not sure about that. So quarterback's always intriguing, but there's some guys that we saw be stars in college, and I kind of want to see where they end up. Because Jalen Milroe is talented enough to have a role in the NFL, but I don't know what that role is.
Not as a first-round quarterback.
Yeah. I don't see him as a first round. No, I mean, early second round, potentially, because you're so intrigued with the ability that he has, because he can make some throws. I mean, it's not all with his legs. He can make some throws. He throws his deep ball actually pretty well. But my goodness, when he hits a corner, when he hits an edge, and he becomes the fastest guy on the field, there's a place in the NFL for that. I mean, the New Orleans Saints have shown that. Taysom Hill was a hell of a college quarterback. He beat Texas a couple times at BYU. Right. And he's been a jack of all trades for the Saints. And there's a role for someone like that. It can be at quarterback at times for Jalen Milroe. But man, you got do whatever you can to be beneficial for your team. And I think he's got the right mentality. So I would love to see somebody take him and use him in that role.
You're the perfect person to ask this question to. Everybody's talking about how special the running back class looks and how special Ashton Jeanty is. The yards after contact being more than what Omarion Hampton had, like, total is just ridiculous. Yeah. So that's what I'm wondering, because there's now buzz about Jeanty potentially going top 5, going to the Jags at that 5th pick if the Raiders aren't that inevitable stopping point at 6. How much better is he than every other back in this class? Because it seems like those two things are totally contradictory. Like, we're told wait on running back, but if he's that dude in this day and age with the 2 high safeties in the NFL, don't you need a game changer like that? Isn't that what the Saquon season has told us?
Like, why do we do that with the running back position? Like, oh man, the best teams had really good ones, but we can find one in the 4th round. I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but Derrick Henry, right? And he was a pretty high draft choice. He didn't wait till the 4th round. Josh Jacobs, 1st rounder. Saquon, 1st rounder. Like, we go look at the game changers. They're all 1st round picks. I mean, for the most part, when Christian McCaffrey's healthy, 1st round pick. Look at the impact that those free agents had this year. Like, I understand that you can find value in the 3rd and 4th round, and this draft is littered with guys you're going to find a lot of value in. Like Dylan Sampson and Cam Scattaboo and, Judkins and Henderson probably not going to be 1st rounders either. There's a lot of value there. But if you got a dude at that position, when you select him, he's different than everybody else. I don't care where you're selecting. Like, why do we treat the running back position any differently? Like, if you get 5 years of Ashton Jeanty going for 100+ yards a game and breaking however many tackles per game, and you know that on first and second down, when you turn around and hand the ball off to that guy, you're going to live in 3rd and 2. Yeah. Like, why would I not select him in the top 10? He is different than every back in this draft. I think Hampton's really good from North Carolina, who you mentioned. I think Henderson, Ohio State, I'd look at him. I love Cam Scatterbo, Dylan Sampson, SEC Player of the Year, which we've already talked about. But Genty was on a team where you and I watching the games, everybody in the stadium, everybody calling the game, both coaches on both sidelines, every player knew he was getting the ball. And there wasn't a damn thing they could do about it. And I don't care who you're playing. And the Mountain West is not a bad football conference, but I don't care who you're playing. At running back, that's hard to do in Pee Wee football. Hell, I coach like 73 flag football teams with my sons, right? And every time that we get going, they're like, watch 18, watch 18. I'm like, oh, man, they got us. They figured it out. We're finding a way to get.
You show up to the field and they say that. Give me a break.
I'm like, oh, man, they found out we're trying to get the ball to Memphis Hester. They found it out. Okay. And it's hard to get it. Like, it's hard. And they have a spy on top of him. They playing man with a spy. It's like, man, this is hard. Ashton Genty just did that. And even against the best teams that they played, right, you might have contained him better than others. You never stopped him. So imagine once he goes to the NFL, say he goes to Jacksonville, which give Trevor Lawrence some help. You're invested, right? You're pot committed. You need to help him. Like, he's in somebody that he's still like a good pro, but remember when they drafted him, Urban Meyer's like, hey, we might use him in the slot. So they weren't really sold on him being a true every down running back. Tank had some nice runs this year. He can be your short yardage, change of pace guy if you had to have him like in a pinch. But no, I mean, Jacksonville, you automatically get better on offense. The Raiders probably are going to take him if you don't. And I don't care that you can find a running back in the 3rd round. You can't find an Ashton Genty in the 3rd round.
Are we sure that Cam Scatterbo is not the 6th Hester?
There's a real chance that we're related somehow, some way. I mean, I saw this guy's dad in the Peach Bowl crowd. I'm like, that guy looks like me a little bit.
Uncle, half brother, even
it's something.
There's
something.
There's
a lot of Hesters out there. I mean, my cousin Devin, he was a star for your Bears for a long time. So maybe. And my goodness, that's somebody that, going back to what we were talking about, he's getting pigeonholed into, the next, he could be, he's a Mike Allstott. It's like, no, he's not. Like, Mike was a game changer. I tried to be like Mike Allstott. But Cam Scatterbo's not that. Cam Scatterbo, like, I don't even know what he's listed at. Okay, he's 5'10". He ain't 5'10". 5'9", 2, probably 12. Okay, he's not a fullback. He's a running back. Why do we try to put that label on him? What does he do well? Everything. He runs hard. He catches the football, runs great routes, as we saw in the Peach Bowl, and he's a hell of a pass protector. Why are we acting like this guy's a short yardage back? Like, it makes no sense to me, but we always do that. It's like, well, I've seen a million Cam Scatterbo's. He's the next Brian Leonard from Rutgers. It's like, no, Cam Scatterbo's different. He's different than me. He's different than Peyton Hillis. He's different than all those guys. Cam Scatterbo can play in the NFL on all 3 downs. We just talked about Ashton Genty with everybody knowing he was getting the football. Do you think there was one person in Atlanta against Texas that was getting the football other than Cam Scatterbo when he was in the game? And Texas defense was elite last year. And they knew. Now, they were trying to tattoo him in the first half. Who won that battle? They won the war. But the battle, Cam Scatterbo got MVP of the game. They were like, I am tired of hitting this cat. Like, number 4 can go find something else to do because I'm tired of playing football against him. And that was against Texas, a team that had as good as a defense as almost anybody in the country. We all knew he was getting the ball. He lined up out at receiver, beat a pretty good safety on a go route, right? Played it exactly right. So if he's on your team, he makes your team better. But that's what I'm talking about with the draft. Like, we just, this guy's that. It's like, why? Like, the comp that you're giving me makes no sense at all. Like, it's not the player that he is. And I'm not calling out anybody, specifically, because I've seen it everywhere. It's like, no. Like, this guy's more Josh Jacobs than he is other players. Like, think about what Josh Jacobs is really good at. A little bit of everything, right? I mean, he can catch the ball in the backfield. He's a willing pass protector. We know he can run in between the tackles. And Josh Jacobs last year, his longest run was 38 yards. 38 yards. So not even the 40-yard dash that everybody's worried about with Cam Scatterbo. He didn't even get there. Josh Jacobs was a damn good running back. I mean, you had to see him twice last year go against the Bears. Okay. So that's more of who he is than any other comp that people are trying to give him, but he's getting pigeonholed. And well, no, this is who he is.
The leg drive with those two, with Jacobs and Scadaboo, insane.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like people need to go back and watch what Josh Jacobs was at Alabama and remember how good that leg drive was because it was unbelievable. That guy played every game like he was, they talked about, he dealt with, some personal issues like with his family. And I think they battled homelessness for a while. That guy looked like he was fighting for his family with every run. That's what Cam Scadaboo looks like. It's the same thing wherever he gets the ball.
It's like somebody has his family hostage. You're right. Like they have him hostage. And if he doesn't convert the run, right, they're not going to get saved. That's what it looks like.
If he goes 69th overall, I'll compare him to you, but anything other than that, I won't. How about that?
Oh, okay. That is fair. But even during the Peach Bowl, I got a ton of messages on Twitter and thank you for sending those messages. But Cam's not me. Like Cam is a different runner than I was. Like he's got a different skill set. Like it is what it is. But we kept getting compared over and over again. He's more like quick twitch for sure. And like my running style was different. Like I tried to find people to hit. Like he's got better vision than that. Like that's who I wanted to be. We run different routes. We pass protect a little bit differently. Like I was 235 pounds. He's 212 pounds. And so very flattering, but we're a little bit different. So I think people need to really watch his tape to see how good he truly is.
People, stop sending Hester all of your white running back love. let's not compare every white running back to Hester.
I do look like his father. I will admit that, but we are not related. I wish we were. Look, I mean, hold on. This right here, you can't see it because the zoom's a little weird. I got the green screen on. Oh, there we go.
Yep, there we go.
It is the Meathead Player of the Year, which went to Cam Scadaboo. Look, there's a little weightlifter right there. It is his trophy, right? I'm waiting to send that to him because I was going to give it to him at the Senior Bowl. Unfortunately, he decided to pull out a little bit late, but I'm going to send that to Arizona State because he is the off-campus Meathead Player of the Year, which is the biggest term of endearment that I can give you.
It's the most coveted award you can win, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Bobby come up with it, and it's like something that you guys really have to sit there and break down. I know it's the low man trophy. It's also up there with the most prestigious honors in college football. I know you got a million things going on. I want to get you out of here talking about some LSU stuff before you have to make the trip up to Green Bay this week. Which, by the way, are you flying into Chicago for that?
I am flying into Appleton.
Okay. Fun little town, Appleton, Wisconsin.
I believe I'm going from New Orleans to Atlanta and then Atlanta to there.
That's going to be better.
I think EJ is flying into Chicago, maybe.
Okay. Because I'm flying into Chicago this weekend for not the NFL draft. And yeah, the flights were absolutely insane. I was just
going for Cubs?
No, I'm actually, one of my good friends from home is getting married this weekend.
Will you watch the Cubs?
I will watch the Cubs. It's the most exciting offense in baseball. I know we got into this on off campus when we were talking about how I just don't have the time for baseball anymore. I just don't.
I used to, oh my God. It used to be the thing I did every day.
Right.
But now, sorry, Braves. I love you still, but I don't love you as much as I used to. I love you, but I'm not in love with you.
Always. The love will always be there. Kids change everything. Yeah. Where would Garrett Nussmeier have gone in this draft? Would he have been third, fourth quarterback off the board? Like, what would the conversations be about him right now?
That's a great question. And I'm surprised, honestly, that he came back because of that. Now, he's like the ultimate team guy. Like, when you start hearing some of the NIL stuff thrown around there and you start to hear what Garrett Nussmeier made a year ago and like what he's making this year, like that guy is team friendly for sure. I think he would have been in conversation for the second or third guy. I mean, how could he not? Like, you look at Shadur Sanders, you look at Jackson Dart, and look, I love a lot about Jackson Dart's game. I think Tyler Shuck's highly underrated as well. But look at what Nuss did in 1 year. And look at his pocket presence and the pre-snap stuff and everything that he does that's pro ready. And it's not a shock. I mean, his dad's been an NFL coach for a long time, and now he's the offensive coordinator for the Saints right down the road from Garrett. So I think he would have gone in, probably would have played in the Senior Bowl. I think he would have been the best quarterback there. I truly do. I think when you look at every throw he can make, and again, taking snaps under center. I've seen him do that. I just think that he's polished already. Now, ceiling, we can have that conversation. Like some of these quarterbacks, maybe they have a higher ceiling. Maybe Shedeur Sanders gets into a pro system and maybe he pulls the trigger a little bit faster because you can't pat the football in the NFL, and maybe the ceiling's higher. But as far as polished and ready to go, no, I think Nussmeier would have been highly, highly drafted in this draft. If three quarterbacks go in the first round this year, he would have been one of the three.
Are you telling me that he didn't go back to the negotiating table and ask for $4 million?
He did not. I hear that's in vogue in the SEC, but he did not. Look, it is not my business to tell. But if some of the numbers that I've seen on Garrett Nussmeier are true, even when he, went back to the table, it was for an amount that no player of his caliber, I think, is getting paid. Like on the low range, I'm talking, not the high range.
What are your thoughts on Harold Perkins not only coming back, but coming back in this star role? Because it seems like there's, I think, a lot of differences in opinion on the player that he's been and maybe even the player that he can become.
Yeah, and I get into this fight every single day. We talk about Perk on the local show. No, I think T-Bob and I actually agree on this one. Some of our listeners, and I get it, like his freshman year off the edge, he was incredible. He was in flashes and spurts. He's not an every down edge player. He can't be. He's not big enough to, like, he literally couldn't do it. And, Jimbo Fisher was on with EJ and I every Tuesday. He's actually going to be on with us later today. And during the breaks, like we would talk about, he's like, yeah, Perk's a great player. But when he was living on the edge, we were running right at him. Like we schemed to run right at him because like he's really good at what he does, but he's undersized to play there every single down. Like you can't live there. When you look at middle linebacker, well, I mean, that's a position that instincts have to kick in. And it's a position that I think you kind of got to be born with that. I said that about running back and Mike linebacker. There's instincts in those positions that you can either do it or you can't. A lot of times the most athletic guy doesn't play running back because it's not all about being the most athletic guy. It's about, do you have vision? Can you read? Well, Mike linebacker is kind of like that as well. And LSU stacked at that position. Got the Weeks brothers, and they got Keys, who was a flash last year and played really, really well. Last year they had Greg Penn, and they're set at that position. He's really good in the slot. Perk's a really good cover guy. When you go back and look at when he was most successful a couple of years ago, outside of, what he did on the edges freshman year, it was playing kind of a nickel star position, kind of call it a nickel Sam. Now it's called star. And he's got great coverage skills. If you have him out there, well, you got somebody that can set the edge in the run game. You also have somebody that you can be creative with and come off the edge. Like you're going to end up in the backfield from that position. Last year, Major Burns played that position, and Major played at LSU for a long time. Major Burns isn't close to as talented as Harold Perkins is. So if Perk buys into that role, it's the only one that I think he can thrive in and be the guy that we all think he can be, because I think it's made for him. And when you look across the NFL, right, that position is key. And you can do it a couple of different ways. You can take a safety there. You can take a very athletic linebacker and put him there. But if Blake Baker does it right, which I think he's got a plan in place for Perk, it doesn't have to be, okay, he's star. That means he's in coverage. No, you don't have to be. Now, he has the coverage skills to do that, but you can still come off the edge. You can be a delay blitzer. You can do so many different things. We saw it last year with Major Burns, but again, Major's not the player that Harold Perkins is. And so if you're talking about a linebacker room with the guys that I just mentioned, Perkins is there at the star position. I think that's best for the defense. And then look, you have edge defenders. They play edge. Like look at the edges that LSU has, right? They're different body types than a Harold Perkins. That's not where he's ever going to live. And so he can be a star, no pun intended, at the star position. He's just got to buy in fully to the role, and they have to utilize him in the best way possible, which I think Blake Baker does have a plan for that.
Selfishly, I just wanted to see him third down guy. That's all I wanted. I would take those flashes, and I'm coming at it from a different perspective than you are of, hey, we need to maximize his value over the course of a game. I still would have loved to have seen those flashes just because, while we'll still see them, I bet it's still one of those guys that, you saw just what he's capable of. And it's hard not to be intrigued by that.
He won a game by himself at Arkansas a couple of years ago. Yeah. The offense sputtered. They were non-existent. Harold Perkins, as a freshman, as an edge rusher, won the game for LSU. What did he have? 4 sacks in the game, and I think he had a sack fumble, and it was an ugly game. It was freezing cold in Fayetteville. He won them the game, right?
He
So
was sick. Yeah.
yeah, I get being intrigued by it, and I do think you can do some of that, but also you try to get the most value. He's got to go out there and give you more, and I think the only place he can give you the more and the most that you're looking for is out at Star.
Last one for you. And you've probably answered a variation of this about 1.5 million times this offseason so far, but LSU feels as playoff or bust as any team in the sport. And while I don't think bust is Brian Kelly gets fired, I do think that it means his group of supporters would take a massive, massive hit. And even the supporters would have a tough time talking about how secure his job is long term.
Yeah.
Where do you stand just on all of that with expectations and what a disappointing season could mean for LSU?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to have that mentality. Like LSU's a place, and we all know it. Like the expectation's incredibly high, but it should be. Like the last 25 years, it's Alabama, then it's LSU and Ohio State tied for the most national championships, right? And they've played for another. So it's about that time. And that's what LSU fans expect. And there's a lot of resources. There's a lot of money that's gone into this team. And Brian Kelly, I don't think shies away from it. Even when he took the job, like he realized what he was coming into. And last year, you had a chance to go play in the SEC championship game. All you had to do was go down to Florida and win that game, and you lost, right? And there's a lot of fans that are upset by that because you let something slip. Because who knows? You get in that game, who knows what happens with a 12-team playoff? And so I do think that is the expectation. That is going to be the standard. And if you don't get to that point this year, you're right. Like there's some people that have defended Brian Kelly, and I'm one of them.
Same.
That the questions are going to be harder to answer if you don't make a college football playoff. You have all the pieces, your receiver room. Like I know we don't have time to get into it. We will before the season. It's as stacked as any in the country. Now, the top end guy, they don't have a Jeremiah Smith. I get that. But in the totality of the room, it's going to be hard to get on the field for any of those guys. They've got basically everybody. They got the leading receiver in Aaron Anderson. They added in the portal. It is going to be stacked. You've got Garrett Nussmeier throwing to him. Caden Durham's now a sophomore, right? The offensive line in the bowl game, that was huge for them to go out there and have the performance that they had against Baylor. There's no excuses. You've got the Jimmies and Joes for the most part. I would say out of the 22 starting positions, you've got 19 right now that I'm like, oh, you can go win. You can go win the SEC with that guy. Now, there's still some questions. Defensive tackle, the safety position, the tight ends you brought in on paper look really good. Mason Taylor is the best you've ever had. So I never want to be like, oh, you'll be fine replacing that guy. He set every record. So outside of those positions, Connor, you should have that mentality. There is not a returning quarterback in the country. Now, there's some on the same level. Like I love DJ Lagway and some others. There's none that I would say, oh, he's better than Garrett Nussmeier. Not one in the country. I wouldn't do it. I think going from year one to year two, we've all seen that jump. I think he's going to take a jump. In his first year, it was better than Jaden. It was better than Joe. It's better than almost anybody that you can throw out there in the purple and gold uniform. So the expectation's high. Are they the best team in the country? Not right now, but they're in the conversation to be one of the best 12 teams in the country. And once you get to that point, we all know college football playoff. We saw Ohio State lose to Michigan like they did to end the regular season, and then they got in the playoff and they went on a run. So work to be done, but certainly right now, as we sit here, one of the 12 best.
Hester, you're one of the 12 best in my book. No doubt about it.
Appreciate that. As long as I'm like somewhere like in the 9-10 range, I feel good about that.
Tier one all day.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Safe travels up to Appleton. Hope you find some stuff to do in that lovely city of Green Bay.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I'm going to search for it. That's for sure.
All right, Will, let's close with some lad of the week. Who you got?
Yeah, man. So I went down to the camp this weekend, saw my family. I'm going to make my lad of the week my Uncle Ricky. He gone through some health stuff. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but looks like some of that stuff has come back. And, being around him is really just kind of inspirational because he spent all weekend, cooking, active, on his feet, being nice to people. Couldn't really tell anything, to kind of change with him. So that dude's a warrior, man. And he's kind of been dealing with health stuff for a minute here. He's never lost his spirit. He's never lost his smile. And he's gotten to where, he can't talk super well now, but he's still telling jokes, with his hands and everything. So just a really inspirational dude, like old school cowboy, loves Yellowstone, and taking care of people. So it's really cool to be around some old world wisdom, and I hope my guy's feeling better soon.
Ricky's best Cajun dish is what?
Oh man, he was cooking some crawfish this weekend that were out of this world, man. John had like 3-4 plates of those. That's how you know it was good. My boy from York, Pennsylvania, he was down there just silently killing crawfish. You know what I'm saying? So they had a full spread. So yeah, it was like he just kept coming back with more stuff.
Whenever I hear you bring up Ricky, and hope he's able to do well and deal with obviously just a really difficult diagnosis. Whenever you mention him, I picture a crawfish boil.
Yeah.
Is that did I just stereotype Ricky? Should I not do that?
He does boil crawfish for sure. Whenever I think of Uncle Ricky, there's a picture that was on the front page of the Homa Times. I might have shown this to you, but it was during Hurricane Rita, and it was him roping cattle during Hurricane Rita, and he was on the back of his horse, and he had like a rope around a calf, and there was water up to like his knees on horseback, and I was like, I make memes, huh? And I was just like, where did this great family go wrong? This guy is a superhuman, and I'm out here stubbing my toe.
I make memes.
That's what I do. That's what I contribute to this world.
Oh God! All right, from one legend to another. I'm gonna go with Corso. As many saw late last week, one more headgear pick in week 1, and then it's going to be a career for Corso. I like that they're doing it this way. I really do. And by the way, nobody should ever put on the headgear again. I don't think that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Any debate over that is really stupid. Of like, oh, should Nick Saban put on the headgear? No, it's a Corso thing. We would hate it. We would hate it if that happened. Mm-hmm. Maybe one random one from Saban, just unannounced at a point way down the road. That I'd be okay with that. But to have it in an every week thing, no, that's Lee Corso. He is an icon. If you've ever been to game day when he was at his peak, well, have you been to when was the last time you were at college game day? Didn't you go there for like a Bama LSU game sometime recently?
I've been to several college game day games, but I haven't gone to game day a ton because you gotta like be up at like 4 or 5 a.m. and they usually go pretty late. But yeah, I mean, probably one of the LSU Bama games or one of the kickoff games, unfortunately. Yeah.
Corso, I know everybody's overusing this word, but his aura at game day, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what happens when he turns around, not just during the broadcast itself, but during commercial breaks when he fires up the crowd. And I'm talking about like peak Corso, not obviously late 80s Corso when, it's a grind for him to be able to travel to be at these games. But it's such a special thing to see. And I was able to see it 2016. I went to Ohio State at Wisconsin. And I was like, I want to get there. I'll get there super early. It was a night game. And I want to get there for game day because I want to see Corso in his element, like in his element as much as possible. You could say maybe by that point he had lost a step, certainly, but it was still so unbelievably cool to see how a crowd responds to that guy. And even more so than Herbie. And, that's before the era of McAfee and all that stuff. But it was really, really special. And I've shared this, I'm sure, at some point before, so I'll repeat myself a bit here. But Corso lives 13 miles from me. Mm-hmm. And Laura and I drive past his neighborhood all the time. And we've very often said to one another when there's severe weather in our area and hurricane season or something like that is, I just hope Corso is okay.
Oh.
And I hope he's at a place where he's not having to deal with this and losing power or something like that. I hope that guy is not dealing with, these ridiculous storms or something like that. But here's something I've been wondering about. I am glad that Corso came along when he did, because I think we're too cynical now to just fully embrace what he is. And I'm not saying, he would get canceled or something like that just because he's said the word midget on live television before. I'm not saying that. We're not doing like revisionist history or going down that road. I just think in this era of the internet, some of which has been hating on Corso for a decade, I think this era of the internet would pick apart a young Lee Corso. I don't know
what's
that
funny. It's that I feel like McAfee probably said that word on air last week, but the thing that's interesting is that Corso was a professional at his heart, right? And I think that you kind of have to pick a way now. You either have to be like Woj, who got forced out of the business, kind of like you just got tired of it. You have to be like the consummate professional, or you have to be purely an opinion guy. And it's very rare for a guy to kind of toe the line the way that Corso did. I think that's a guy that is very hard to find now, because guys either get called, like you could see Herbstreit kind of go, you know what, I'll be an opinion guy. I'd rather just be an opinion guy and because people attack people for being biased all day anyway. It's like, might as well just do that, you know?
Yeah, I just think there would have been a lot more discourse with him.
Yeah.
And instead, for the 20 years that he was a fixture in this sport before the internet really started popping off,
yeah,
he was so loved, and you could see the passion that he brought and his perspective. I can't remember who it was who shared this, so apologies because I'm not giving proper credit here, but his goal was to be college football's version of Dick Vitale, and you could argue he kind of did it better.
Yeah, he kind of did. I actually just started thinking about Dick Vitale because I think he lives over by you too, and I was like, actually, I think he kind of did this better than Dick Vitale because he was a serious guy. He was a guy who I valued his opinion. It wasn't like it was a bit, you know?
Yeah, and I think there would have been, like, if he was just coming up now, I'm talking about like the 40-year-old version of Corso, 45-year-old version of him. But people would have just looked at his picks, said, "Oh, your picks aren't good. Look at your record." And you just are going to get hate wherever you go with these mascot helmets and stuff like that. Instead, it's just become something that is such a huge part of our sport. Mm-hmm. And I know that he gets a lot of that now because of where he's at in his career, but I just think there'd be so much more of a divide on him. And instead, the worst thing that you can say about Lee Corso now is that he's lost his fastball, which, spoiler alert, late 80s professionals lose their fastball. Like they just do. But I think it's awesome that he's going to be 90 years old for that last pick. Like, that's so cool. He turns 90 in August, 90 years old, and he's going to be getting up on a stage and making a headgear pick for the final time. That's cool.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know what he's saying, and if he's just trailing off, that's still so cool.
90 is nuts. Yeah, I mean, that's just so clearly like I'm doing that at 90. I've won. If I'm even doing a fraction of that, yeah.
Dude, if I'm doing that at 70,
that's kind of what I was gonna say. Is like, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I've only seen him at the Orlando airport once, and it was just in passing, coming out of the bathroom. I think I said, "Hey, Lee," which does he answer to Lee? I don't know.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone call him Lee. Actually.
LC or Corso is pretty much it. But yeah, my goal is that I can run into him during his retirement. What if we're calling this retirement? He's been living the retirement sort of life probably for a long time with what he's been doing. But I just want to run into him on a random Tuesday afternoon at Petty's, which is the local butcher. It's kind of located in between where like my house and his house are. And it's an institution in the area. If you know, Petty's. But I just want to run into Lee Corso one day and just have a 2-minute stop and chat with him. And I think there are so many college football fans that would love to be able to do that, even if it meant, he's not there fully processing or giving you back and forth, but just, man, such a huge part of college football culture. And when you close your eyes and think about the people that have made this sport into what it is over the course of the last 3 decades, Corso's on that Mount Rushmore. Whatever that is, he's certainly part of it.
100%, man. It's a legend that's like, and I'm actually not a huge fan of like the full year retirement tour either. So I think that's the best way to do it. Because I think after a while it becomes like kind of a self-serving, like, no, we got to give the greatest thing. We're going to this stop. We're going to get content out of it. I think that is truly going out your way. So yeah, hats off to him. He's a legend.
I'm going to cry when that tribute video comes around. And maybe that makes me a sap, whatever. And I'm going to cry laughing when they show the video of Uga crapping on his foot. That is one of the funniest moments. That was during 2020 too, when he was doing all of those from his house. And he's like, my foot. It gets me every single time. He's just in tears. This dog just crapped all over his foot. Oh God. What an icon. But yes, Lee Corso, one more headgear pick. I'm assuming they're going to be Texas at Ohio State. He's not going to be going to Bama, Florida State, even though Florida State's his alma mater.
They wouldn't do that to him. Yeah.
Yeah. No, don't subject him to that football, Florida State. Yeesh. But yeah, one more thing I wanted to say. Want to shout out Pat Mayo. I told you the story, and I meant to bring it up on last pod, and I should have. I don't know why I didn't, but Lauren and I were at Chicken Fire about a week and a half ago on date night. And we're walking in, and for nobody knows what I'm talking about here, but it's a place that's in a strip mall. It's not even like a standalone location or anything, but it's my favorite hot chicken that I've ever had. Yes, in beautiful Orlando, Florida. It is that good. And I've had Nashville hot chicken institutions, but we don't need to get into that. As we're walking in, car pulls up. Guy says, Connor? And I thought it was one of my buddies from here. I thought it was my buddy Drew Taylor, who I've also met through the show as a listener. And this guy like waves me down, and it's this guy, Pat Mayo, and he's there with his wife, and he's been listening to the show for a really long time. In town this weekend, lives in the Panhandle, and was just in town for the weekend, and saw Lauren and I, and recognized me enough to be able to like say something in the parking lot, and had a great 10-minute conversation with he and his wife. His wife used to work at Mississippi State and used to go to Joe Moorhead's church and stuff, and like had just like great like condensed football conversations in that very limited period of time. But it was a really cool interaction, and it was awesome. And we were, chatting with them while they're waiting on food to go. But just one of those, like, what are the chances of something like that happening, of somebody that's just in town, that very specific weekend, and, being at that specific place. But wanted to give him a shout out.
Joe Moorhead's churches, that feels like a pod match.
Right?
That's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
And they love Joe too. But it's just, we briefly got into, it's unfortunate it didn't work out. But I had conversations about UCF, and he's a big Florida fan living in Florida State country and stuff. And so talked about a lot of that stuff, but love having these conversations. And so, would love to be able to have conversations like that with people in the future, SEC media days and, games itself. I love, being able to like, I'll have like a listener say like, hey, during an SEC championship or something like that, could you like meet up for 5 minutes at halftime? Hell yeah. Every single time. Always love doing that stuff. So really appreciate that. And it was cool. Like it made my night. It was one of those like just awesome experiences, and grateful that it happened.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's one of Andre would joke about my micro celebrity, because among like a very specific groups of dudes in the Southeast, they know who we are. That's our people. We rock with him.
We'll bust out one laugh, and they're like, I know that guy.
Dude, so many people have found me because of my laugh. It's so funny. I guess that's my calling card. I'll take it.
Will gets it from across the restaurant.
That's how I met Krista. That's literally how I met Krista. She heard my laugh, and we're like, I know that laugh. I was like, I just got in a car wreck, and that's how I met Krista.
That is very specific and believable.
You want a story? You're not going to believe this. I almost died today, and that's my friend now. So.
Oh, God. Unbelievable. But love it, just getting to have those interactions. So please, hopefully, we'll get to have some of those moving forward. One more reminder, if you are not yet locked in with the good folks at Dabble, please do so. Get in on the daily fantasy space. It's awesome. Use that promo code SDS2. Get $25 in bonus cash. No deposit required. That is who today's pod was brought to you by. Also, we are not doing a round one recap. We've done that in years past, just with the way that we're structuring things during the offseason. We're not going to be able to make that work this year. Also, with my travel schedule this weekend, we will not be doing a round one week recap. So we will have something hopefully recording next Tuesday will be the plan, and then coming out next Wednesday. I think that's going to be the plan.
So if you want the Quinn Ewers draft update, this is where you find it.
Exactly. Yeah, by the time Sunday rolls around, I think we'll have everything pretty much figured out. But yes, hopefully everybody is able to enjoy the NFL draft. Please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at Sat Down South, at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.